Ladies and gentlemen, I have noon on my phone. I'm gonna call the Wednesday, June 8th Criminal Justice Coordinating Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Kathy McCoy, Gary Hilgendorf, Mark Howard.
Here.
Marshall Switzky.
Here.
Elaine Smith. Amy Bellinger. Brian Reed. Tweed Schuman. Brian Boucher. Andy Alvarado.
Present.
Jeff Johnson.
Here.
Bruce Paquette.
Here.
Doug Rotek.
Here.
John Yakov.
Present.
You have 6 out of 14.
On quorum.
7. We have 7.
All right. We're good.
On an even board, Andy, is 7 considered the even board, 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. Okay.
I don't know. I saw a smile on that face.
I'll pay the fine if we're not.
Madam Clerk, are we in certification of compliance with open meetings law?
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Meeting agenda. We need a motion for the agenda? No?
Nope, just that for changes.
All right, any changes, updates, anything need to be moved around? Hearing none, public comments. Is there anybody from the public online, Mike?
Linda Ziller and Jamie Kerner.
They want to speak or they just,
Well, Linda's just joining tonight.
Maybe call for public comments again since you just got in.
Is there anybody that's joining remotely that would like to make a public comment?
No.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion approving the minutes from the previous meeting.
make a motion to approve those minutes.
First from Mark Hellwig,
I'll second it.
second from Marshall Savitsky. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Criminal Justice Coordinator, Ms. Berry?
We have, our numbers are increasing. We have currently on pretrial, we have 94 individuals. We have 16 on diversion. We have 3 referrals pending. We have 3 people that have completed diversion. We have 1 pending termination on diversion that has possibly failed out. We'll see. We have 8 intakes pending from our wait list. We have 19 intakes pending for new bonds and 34 that were removed from the wait list due to non-compliance, but we're working with the judge on getting new bonds.
Anybody have any questions, comments for Ms. Berry? All right, TAD grant, drug court progress update. Would that be you, Andy? Who would that be?
I'll start it. I asked for this to be added to the agenda. So I think everybody is aware that the county received a TAD grant through the Department of Justice. And that TAD grant is funding the work of Justice Point to set up a diversion and drug court or alternative court. So a couple things that's, Tom had kind of been responsible for that. Now we've subbed myself in. We need to have a kind of a committee of jurisdiction that oversees that TAD grant and the work. So it's decided that we're going to do that here because we need to turn minutes into the state of the progress for that. We just completed the first quarter reports. Got those in or behind schedule, but we're getting everything caught up. But I wanted to have it on here and then allow Becky the chance to give an update on the work they're doing on a monthly basis. some of you, I think you already covered in the report, but maybe if you want to fill in any other details on what you've been doing with the TAD grant.
So we can, our goal with TAD is to increase diversion cases, which we've been working with the courts and the district attorney's office to get more referrals for diversion, which we are getting. So we have a process in place with risk reports so that we will get, the district attorney's office will read more risk reports and send us referrals with low to moderate risk people for diversion. If they have any questions, they can come to us.
Then the drug court. Did you went to the state?
I went to WATCP. My intention is to go to NADCP. We'll see where that is going. Jamie, do you want to add anything about that?
Just to expanding a little bit, is that the grant amount was not fully funded to do both the diversion and the treatment court. We received approximately half of that, so that's why the focus has been on the TAD diversion program. For the national conference, there's other budgeted funds will have to come in to pay for the presence of Becky to attend the Nashville conference.
And that's a good thing to know, because when I was here last month and we talked about the national conference, I was under the assumption that the grant was going to cover some of the drug court members attending the conference. It was because the grant application I had been looking at was not the one that was approved by the state. It was the one that had it in there, and then at some point, I don't know if it was submitted and dropped by the state or if they ended up submitting a lower amount. But it's interesting. I just got an email before I came down here that we submitted the program report. A lot of the information is related to the diversion program. The question that came back in is what's the status of your activities as it relates to the treatment court? But based on what David just said, the grant wasn't intended to cover the treatment court.
The state looks at it as, yes, it is. We asked for a larger pool of funds to fund both of the programs, but really what the state gave us pays for one of the programs. But that doesn't mean that we can't be exploring the implementation and the start of the treatment court, and should be.
And the position of the court has always been, we were here a year ago and we were talking about diversion and we were trying to get that started up. That was the contemplation when the state passed the bill for the second judge for Sawyer County. There was some discussion regarding, well, what needs to be in place? What should you have? Because it wasn't just, all right, you provide the space, we give you the second judge. There was a little bit more of a, well, you should be doing this with these grants. And I don't know the exact history, so I don't want to get into it, but I know that there was we went for the I think diversion, but we really didn't have diversion, so we kind of pivoted last August in those applications, and then the treatment court process got in. The discussion with this court, with me and with the 10th district and with the county, has always been, we need a second judge in order to have more judicial time to create or to administer the drug court. And so I guess, to make a long story short, I don't want to go on forever here. It's simply that I have no problem here with where we're at right now before the second judge begins, that we explore, develop, talk about what it's going to look like, but the actual implementation, there's just absolutely no judicial time between now and the beginning of the second branch to do that. And so the intention is, because it was always, when I went to the state and said, how do you expect me to get a drug court going in order to justify the second judge when I need the second judge to get the drug court going? And they changed the language in there, and the 10th districts told us that the diversion program is satisfying that. And so whatever monies we get, we have the diversion program that satisfies the requirement of the state to get the second judge. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be dealing with all of the construction out there. And then but I'm thumbs up with exploring and looking at a drug court as long as we keep it in the context of everything that we're doing. But the full implementation of that cannot happen until after the second judge starts. So I mean, just,
Okay.
yeah, I just want to exploring, creating, planning, all that stuff is great, but it's like, we can't actually build it until the second judge is just here. I mean, so it's like we're for the courthouse, we're in the planning stages of just thinking, well, what's it going to look like? What we're going to do? How do we want it to look like? Do we as players here think that maybe a more non-traditional drug court, such as a pretrial, would be appropriate? Do we want to go with the traditional model? Are there other places maybe where we want to spend money that we think is more important and more beneficial to the people who are in these programs? So that's where, I guess that's my viewpoint and position on it. So I just don't want people to think, well, we've got to get this drug court created. We've got to do it by next year. If you took a look at my calendar right now, you know that that's going to be impossible. So, but then, yeah.
I'm happy to hear you share that.
Okay.
I'll need to find out two things. One is if the DOJ with the grant understands that's where we're at. And
Judge,
then
do you have, oh, I'm sorry.
does Justice Point, are you guys on the same page with what the judge said? Was that the understanding going into the project, or?
Well, we submitted a timeline. I don't know how restrained we are to that timeline with that application. I mean, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, Jamie.
Right, and I think the timeline that was submitted, my understanding is that was if we had gotten the full funding, that was our how we were going to be laying out both the diversion program and the hybrid treatment court. Clearly that, that can't happen under the current dollar amount nor in the current time frame, and this is going to take some time, right? I mean, and I agree that one of the first things that needs to be done is creating a subgroup or a work group of those who may make up the future of the team of a treatment court to start doing the exploration of what it's going to take and how it's going to, what it might look like. So yeah, we are looking at an extended timeline, but those activities also fit within the grant.
So I will take up the conversation with DOJ and the grant people to make sure we're all on the same page.
Can I be a part of those
Sure.
conversations?
I'll insist upon it.
Okay. I had a panic moment yesterday and I called Jamie in a frenzy when we realized where we were at on our timelines. So that would help if I could be a part of those.
Sounds good.
Excuse me, Judge, do you have any idea when the second judge will be coming on board? We have an idea when that's what the construction's supposed to be done, but when will he be coming on board? Or
He or she.
that person, exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that the election is in place. I mean, it's going to be an April election, and whoever is elected will take office August 1st of 2023, whether or not, I mean, because there's not going to be space for that second judge right away. What's going to happen, my understanding, is that they've got the addition, the new courtroom will be completed by end of July. They're going to move me over there, and then they're going to start then tearing apart the existing courtroom and chambers. And that's, do you have any kind of end date as to when that? I was told a long time ago, like early 2024, it might be done by.
Yeah.
Is that, do you have anything that's dramatically different than that?
No, I don't.
Okay, so that's my understanding. And then, so then by like, late winter, spring of 2024, 2 judges, 2 complete courtrooms. So the idea being is that, that the new judge will have, a month or 2 of at least being out of county, trying to get up and mentoring with other judges. They don't mentor generally judges in the same county. So that judge will be going around. We'll be sharing, I assume that they'll be in the small courtroom for a period of time, just with hearings. And then if they have jury trials, we'll have to share the new or the existing courtroom until the second one is done. So we haven't talked about that with the 10th district. We will be. I know that that's on the agenda for the fall, but that's kind of somehow it's going to look like. So that second judge isn't really going to be up and running full speed. My guess would be at least until October
24?
October of 23. I mean, 2 months of at least just kind of getting their feet wet and starting to do some hearings, whether it's in, we're sharing a courtroom or they're in the small courtroom. And then certainly by the time the second courtroom or the existing courtroom has been remodeled, we should all be up top full speed.
Well, that would kind of give them an idea of what their timeline would have to be for us getting all the information together
Yeah.
as far as.
Then the branch 2 is not going to be ready to go on August 1st of 2023. There's going to be a steep learning curve.
Well,
But I would say by mid-fall or something, I would think that the new judge would be,
right, that's what I was going.
yeah,
off
their
of.
feet would be wet enough that they would then be able to start participating and really,
Right, I was going off the 2 months after, like
Yeah.
you said, October-ish.
I think that's
November,
realistic.
Then they'd have, an idea that they get all their stuff together by then.
and it's not that they can't participate or wouldn't be beneficial before then. It's just they're going to have a lot on their plate to digest and to do things with.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions, concerns about this? All right, identify and review supporting data.
That came from me. It's part of CJCC, and as we look towards drug court and use of the opioid settlements and some other things that we discussed here, thought it'd be good at some point to kind of set down some data points that we should start tracking, because things like the TAD grant are competitive. At some point, the TAD grant will probably run out, and the county board will have to decide whether or not to fund these type of activities. So I'm not sure exactly what data I'm looking for. I think the group probably could come up with some, but then we start tracking, like we talk about jail inmates needing mental health services. Like, how many we track? How many of the inmates this month need them? How many are getting them? What is the shortage that we're not meeting? The same with when we talk about the opioid settlement and setting up treatment facilities. So how many people do we believe, or where do we get the number of people that we think need those services versus the people that are getting them versus that aren't getting them, and kind of start building the numbers that we can monitor on a monthly basis going forward. I think you guys are to keep some numbers for like CAD calls and jail inmate numbers in the jail. I think those numbers actually be good to use here too, just to start. We need to go out and talk about DOJ grants. We need data for those things. And I think they use data for the courts. I heard justifying the second court needed to have a number of sets of data that they use to justify that. The same thing I think for drug court and other investments that we're either going to make at a county level or go out with our hat in our hand and look for funds and grants to improve some things. So I kind of want to put that on there and keep it on there. I don't, if somebody else has some ideas of data points that we think would be useful for us to gather, start building that list and start having them at the meeting. Because we also want to be able to say 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, these were the numbers in 2022 and these are the numbers now. So either we're making progress or we're not making progress. You have to have some way to measure that.
I just want to go right along with that I like the idea of tracking as far as the mental health, the ones that need it and that are getting it, so that we have to try to get more hours for that mental health person, it's 8 hours a week right now as it is.
Correct.
For the jail. So, if we can show these, like you said, the data, then maybe get them more money to get more hours. And like you said, the only way we'll get those hours is with that.
And I think we should involve at some point public health and talking with Julia and the things she's working on. They're probably starting to put together their numbers. They're coming at it from a same problem, different angle, just on a community health level. But they plan to they're working to bring on a couple of AmeriCorps persons, and one would be dedicated towards kind of the data and grant writing to bring in resources to assist some of these issues.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, opioid settlement options update, 11A. I can touch on this. We talked about a little bit at our work group meeting that we had a couple weeks ago. Advanced Correctional Healthcare local employees, the local hires are phenomenal. But when you get to the higher ups, there's a lot of back and forth and we don't always get exact information that we're looking for. The best that I can come up with is that it would be $65 an hour per additional hour for mental health in the jail. Our current mental health professional, Kevin Lynch, who is coming in 8 hours a week, I've gotten rave reviews from both inmates and staff on him, doing a great job. Just, there's more of a need than there is hours. So we would kind of run into a caveat depending if we added 2 more hours, he may not be able to do those hours because he has another full-time job at UW Superior doing the same thing. If we made it a total of 40 hours a week, then he would probably consider coming on full-time, but that would again be a financial decision that we would have to look at and sustaining that. 40 hours a week of mental health in the jail, I can safely say it's needed. The practicality of it though is a whole different ballgame. So just something we
What
might
was that
want.
last number? How many hours?
Well, if we had a full-time mental health professional, they have 40 hours, the need is there. That would also help out with, inmates on suicide watch and getting, evaluations on a quicker basis, things like that. So, any questions on mental health hours in the jail?
Would that be beneficial even for, let's say, somebody who either an attorney or the court says, we have to do a competency evaluation, but they're still in custody, and then you'd have that individual there to help that person through while the state is making arrangements to come do a competency evaluation, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so
Yep,
we've had those situations.
11B.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I don't think I've shared it with this group. So the opioid settlement itself, we had some paperwork come through earlier this week that we've signed off on. So the money is getting into the pipeline to get to us. We think we'll get a payment maybe by August. Right now, they still haven't divided up over a period of years. We don't know the exact number of years, but it's roughly 16 to 18. That's what they're talking about. The county association did give us, or has put together a proposal where the counties can get the money up front rather than over 18 years. Roughly the formula right now that they're talking about is we'll probably end up getting the first payment before they get this in place. But whatever the settlement amount is we have, let's say 750, roughly, rough numbers, we could get half of it up front. So we get 375 this year, and then remaining 25%, excuse me, not the remaining, 25% of what's remaining, 25% of the total would get paid over the 18 years, and the other 25% would go away. That'd be the cost of getting the money up front. So it's like you winning the lottery and selling off your payout to get the money up front. So you lose 25% of it. So that's where that's at. That they're still putting that together, but the county will have to make a decision on that at some point, probably yet this year. And then there was something from the work group here, Gary Hilgendorf, discussion on directing some of the opioid settlement money to a treatment for individuals. They asked me to talk to on a regional basis what people are looking at. And Gary's group found a facility in Luck. It's got 100 and some beds at it that they think they could convert into a treatment facility similar to the House of Hope here, as long as counties would send people there for treatment. And I didn't get much traction on the regional level. Most counties already have a pretty good idea of where they're going to take their opioid money, and largely it looks like it's going to go to fund their existing diversion and treatment options. So there's just, I don't at this point see a lot of regional collaboration on spending opioid money, in part because on a county level, it's not a ton of money. So,
11C, Healing to Wellness Court, local conference update. Yep, I know it's Judge Smith's not here. Number 12, community services updates. Gavin and Gary, he's not here. 13, future agenda items. Anybody have anything they want to see at our next meeting? Nothing. Correspondence reports for conferences and meetings. Any other matters for discussion only?
I had a question, just curious. Like the diversion we've talked about is mainly for adults. What do we do for juveniles? Do we have any like alternate sentencing for juveniles or youth court or truancy court or traffic court? They all just run through the district court. who takes that question.
Bruce.
We don't have any of those courts. However, we just did something similar to that this morning. Although I can't really talk about the case, but we do have mechanisms in place to do diversion. Meaning that it's usually social services that will give a program or set up programs for the juvenile to work through to make sure that they're hopefully not violating any laws in the future. And as long as they're doing that, then things are great, right? So yes, it's a form of diversion. It's just called something different. That's all.
And that's what happened. I mean, so if I recall, that case number had a 1 to it. So it was 22 JB 1. So here we are in June and we're getting to the first juvenile case filed of the year. And so I point that out only because we deal with so few of those. I mean, not that they don't exist, but I mean, as far as, at least just from my viewpoint, I mean, I don't know what the department is doing. Maybe they're dealing with hundreds of kids that are juveniles that have issues, or maybe they're dealing with very few. But obviously, some then get to Mr. Coquette's desk, and then some get filed, and then that's what I see. And so, I think the court system, I think the DA's office, and certainly the defense attorneys that represent these juveniles, they work. I mean, they understand how the system works, and we work, and the court approved an agreement today that basically said the juvenile stays out of trouble. And I think in this one, it was for around a 12-month period, I think, then the matter is dismissed. And they have conditions that they have to follow. I know that there are some other ones where either maybe 6 months or you can shape it other ways. So it happens. It's just not a formalized structure due to the fact that to formalize a structure like that for such few cases is almost counterproductive. I guess the other need would be is if you had a judge or a DA or a department that didn't understand what was going on and were in conflict with each other as far as the approval. But I mean, it comes through, it makes sense, and so we do it. So I mean, it's informal, but yet you have the same result of a diversion for a juvenile and that kind of situation.
So the court isn't, I mean, you have a lot of cases, but it's not bogged down with juvenile issues.
Correct.
But truly, spending a lot of time on truancy.
Correct.
And
Well, the truancy I haven't done for a number of years. We had Jim Schlender do it, and since that time, they've taken a different approach. But the school is the school has taken a different approach to it as well. I mean, the reality of truancy is that the school deals with these students to such an extent that all of a sudden when they get to us, it's like they've done everything they can. And so now you have a truancy and you have a parent and a student sitting there, and in 3 minutes, I'm supposed to talk with them and say, all right, I'm going to come up with a way. So now you guys are going to want to go to school. I mean, truancy is a real problem as far as what's the purpose, what are we supposed to do, what kind of structure is with the school, but it's so far down on the list because we're dealing with so many other things that potentially could be another thing that we could put on the list when we have more judicial time to be able to restructure that and say, all right, instead of just wasting time and spinning our wheels for the school, for the court system, what can we do to improve that or to make it at least somewhat with a bite or effective or something like that? So that, yeah.
Judicial time is an issue.
Yep.
So at the public safety meeting, you guys had mentioned a chunk of the tickets you were writing, you said would go away now because a lot of those were truancy tickets. I mean, do we write a lot of tickets for truancy or a lot of citations?
There is quite a few, yes.
And they just come in and pay the fine and
Well, what happens, in the school, since Jim left, we haven't been able to address necessarily, I mean, because there's no time on my calendar to reintroduce, a morning for truancy. I mean, even right now, we went up to 11:55, and at 1 o'clock, I've got a felony sentencing that I've been reviewing a PSI on. So, I mean, we're moving throughout the day, and truancy is just one of those that, well, you get a court commissioner that kind of leaves or falls off, and then it's like, well, how do we get this structured? The school has kind of said, yeah, let's just issue these tickets, and then I think it's the Corp Council that if they don't pay the fines, then the Corp Council will do something with those unpaid fines. But it's like, well, you have the parents that come in, they get issued a citation for not getting their kid to school, and then you have the kid. And then, there are a lot of issues. And what I would like to do on that at some point is to say to the school, what do you want from the court system? I mean, you've dealt with these kids, and so if you are unable to get them to come to school, I mean, I get it. I mean, putting a forfeiture on them because they didn't come, okay, that's a repercussion. But if you want me to sit and talk with these 14-year-old about why they're not going to school, I'm going to need a lot more than 2 minutes or 3 minutes, for each of them. So yeah, there's a real potential for reorganization and redirection on truancy.
Mr. Hovick?
Well, my question has to do with other than truancy. Because,
Throw a rock through a window?
right, that kind of stuff. And, I mean, I know that there's kids that they get picked up for drug possession and paraphernalia.
What we were talking about before he brought up truancy was what you were talking about, like what we did this morning with this one individual. That was your more traditional juvenile delinquency, theft, whatever. And
I don't want you to get the impression that there's only one delinquent.
Right.
Oh,
That's-
no, I know
that's
that's not the case
yeah,
at
that's
all.
not what
It's just the first one that's going
that's right.
this
It
far.
was filed it was the first one that was filed this year. And we're getting to it and we're dealing with it. So yeah, I apologize if I gave a bad impression. I don't think there are that many that are filed with juvenile delinquencies, but I'm just showing you, that it takes a while to get through the system. And then when it does, I mean, the DA's office is at least flexible and open enough as a court system to look at this and say, does it warrant a diversion type process?
We don't want to get too far in the law portion, and everything, but
But this is your opportunity. I mean, you're not in the court system, so this is your opportunity to
right.
ask questions. Absolutely.
So as far as you were saying juvenile delinquency, now is that what they're just classified? Say if they are, drug possession or.
The
it's
15-year-old gets picked up
across the board
gets picked up with meth or
juvenile
steals a car. It's a juvenile delinquency if they're not moved into adult.
No
court.
statute goes on their, when I know they're not really put through the arrest system and all that, but.
Well, but they'll go through the department. If they're a danger, they could potentially be in juvenile detention. Most of them aren't.
No.
Some are. But then the department will work with them and their families and determine some good programming or conditions. And if they have usually they have an attorney, but they have an attorney, they work out an agreement with the DA's office, and then it comes to court and it is processed and disposed of in the sense that it's like chips. I mean, you have an initial hearing. If they want to fight, you can have a fact-finding hearing and then a dispositional hearing, and then they have to go and they're under the supervision and control of the department. And if they screw up, they come back in court, and if they get the services that they need. I mean, it's juvenile is not geared towards punishment. It's more towards services and trying to get the juvenile the help that they need so that they can rehabilitate and go on with their life, as opposed to jail and probation.
Right, and that's where
Yeah.
was the Health and Human Services come up, the people that, can't think of the group, when they get called up when a juvenile
The
comes
crisis
in.
social workers.
Yeah, the social workers
Yeah.
come in and take care, because unless something really drastic has happened, I can't imagine there has since 2012, that the kids have, the delinquents have just dropped off.
Well,
Because,
something has drastically happened is that we haven't had a full staff over there.
Yeah.
So now when the county board encourages the social workers to have full staff, then things work better and you can provide more services to more, and you have more individual care for each of the delinquents. So right now, okay, judge only sees one case. That doesn't mean that there was only one referral during that time. Every time law enforcement has contact with a kid who's throwing a rock through the window or setting a car on fire, because I have one of those cases, or stealing a pack of gum or whatever, first it goes to social services. And if you have a full staff there, they can do one-on-one services with that individual or that family. So when they have a referral there, and recently I've had about 12 of them in the last couple of weeks, they don't always get to him.
Right, and that's just put this juvenile one comes in. This is the first one this year that has gotten to this level in the
Right.
court system. Is that my understanding, the JV one?
So what happens is they,
Thank you.
they tell me one of three things, either they're gonna close the referral and not do anything, which doesn't happen that often, or they're going to do some type of a deferred agreement, meaning that social services is gonna work with them and try and make sure that things are going better in the future. Or they can say, hey, Bruce, you need to file a petition and bring this in front of the court, and let the court do something. And in any of those cases, I can say to them, hey, look, I don't think this is appropriate. I mean, if you're firebombing a car, I don't think this is a diversion, it should be in front of the judge. And I can change, I can tell them that I don't like what they're proposing, I think there should be a petition. But it doesn't mean that there's only one.
Right.
Like I said, we've had 12 or 13 in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
But-
And I think a lot of this was just kind of getting it back
Yep.
in the brain again from,
So it's nice to
Years
have
back.
more youth justice staff. I mean, anytime a spot sits empty over there, that we don't have an employee working, it makes it harder on the other folks. Instead of having 20 cases, they have 50 cases, so.
I mean, it's all the frontline workers. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, it's like law enforcement. I mean, if the law enforcement officers in the community just didn't arrest anybody anymore, yeah, okay, we're just gonna break up fights and we're gonna make sure that, if the house is on fire, we're gonna make sure the fire department gets called, but they don't arrest anybody, well, sure, then all our numbers go down. If there is limited people over in Health and Human Services to respond to the referrals of the juveniles, and there's limited amount of resources to get them into programming or everything, it's just things fall off. I mean, and so having people, the law enforcement officers, they see a crime, they make their arrest, and it gets to Mr. Poquette's desk, and then it gets to the court. I mean, yeah, it's amazing how many different steps there are in the process, and how much discretion is used. Like Mr. Poquette said, I mean, if they want to deal with somebody in an informal basis, they have that ability to. So,
gotcha, thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
I was asking just because it's bogging down the court system with juvenile cases. I mean, human services can handle a lot of them. There are some counties that have specific youth restorative programs that are separate from human services because there's a stigma with getting services through human services.
Sure.
So it's like a standalone program that they set up a teen court. It's a jury of your peers, and they do victim witness panels, and your first time underage drinker, they run you through the underage drinking class, but it's to divert cases away from these guys that are doing more important things, but still have an effective outcome on
Mhm.
youth.
Yeah, if you take a look at what our problem is and why we needed a second judge, we're not getting swamped down by juvenile cases or CHIPS cases or divorces or civil actions. It's the criminal felony cases. That is what is driving everything and driving our time.
I'm sure if we had the hours-long conversation, somebody would say, well, why do we have those cases? Well, it's because
Sure.
of the
Yeah,
crappy job.
there's always something that,
You should have done a better job when they were younger and didn't.
All right, any other matters for discussion only? Before we adjourn, we want to keep this monthly. My opinion is we should.
my opinion is we should.
Any other input? Dates for next meeting?
Same day as the land and water and, yeah,
13th of July at noon? Any conflicts?
I'll be on vacation.
Okay.
So, but I can try to, if there's something that comes up, submit a report and just see if there's something I want to throw out there. And try to get on Zoom, but I'm not sure exactly what the plans are. But don't change it just because of that unless you think there's something comes up.
Okay, so we're set for Wednesday, July 13th at noon.
sounds good.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, man, I was just gonna say, it gives me an opportunity to pick your brain.